Welcome to Money on Tap. Money on Tap, your personal finance headquarters, where we bring out the professionals' experience and some fun in what we call three-dimensional investing, utilizing insurance, brokerage, and fee-based planning. That's what we do on this show. We look at all sides of the issues, and we bring a fully independent planning perspective to the table. Welcome. You are listening to Money on Tap. My name is Seth Krusman.
And I'm Ben Brayshaw.
So glad to have you aboard with us today.
Good to see you again, Seth.
Is it?
Yeah, it's good to see you.
Are you you said the first time you said it, I felt so good because there wasn't even like a seated doubt in it. It was
just jumping back, just a week later, Seth. Just happy to be back on the show. We're going to rock it out today. I'm excited.
Yeah, well, you have seen me since then, and you will see me next week before then.
I see you every day.
But today is special because it's Money on Tap, and we get to have some fun with what we do all the time in our office, and that's help our clients figure out and make retirement a reality. We talk about that so often in our office. Sometimes we forget to bring that to the show. That's what we're doing.
Well, this is where we get to jump out a little bit of our skins of being the serious planner and have a little bit of fun and educate. And I love that part about this show, and I'm pretty excited about today's show because it is so relevant for so many Americans. So
with that, do we have anything else that we want to just kind of chit chat about before we get going on?
No, I think you should just tell them what the show is, Seth.
All right, here you go. You want to retire early. Your employer is offering you some kind of incentive to retire early. Whichever one of those it is, we're going to figure out how to make it happen. This is your Retire Early show on Money on Tap. And go. Money in the news. Well, first off, Italy is back on the front lines or the headlines for us today. Not the front lines, because front lines was definitely the coronavirus. And this is not that. This is entirely different. It's about Italy as a tax haven. And the question is it the next tax haven? And Arthur Sarkeesian brought us a lovely article, really kind of attempting to hash out this idea with us and see if maybe this is what you should be considering.
Seth, we've done a lot of shows on places to retire throughout the world and the United States. We've done all sorts of different things. People have called us about, hey, where should I be retiring? Or what state? Is it Florida or Arizona? And what are the pros and cons to that? And we've done stuff on that. We've talked to people about that. But this is kind of a different slant of an article, and not necessarily worthy of a show, but probably worthy of a conversation for someone who's in this area. But Italy has said, we're just going to do a flat tax for anybody who wants to come live here, essentially. It's 100,000 of their currency, which I don't know what the actual currency exchange is on that. But currently, Italy's tax rate's 43%. So if you're making $500,000 a year, or you own a business, $1 million a year, you don't want to give away 43% of your money, but now you just got to clear 100,000.
Yeah, so that's the income tax on all income generated outside of the country, right? So if you have your income domiciled outside of Italy, it's a flat tax, 100K or not? Yeah, 100. It is still 1,000 because it's a euro. It doesn't matter. 100,000 doesn't change necessarily because it's a dollar or a euro. It's still 100,000.
Right. In the same currency exchange.
Correct. Right. Yeah. So, anyways, that 100,000 is capped, and so that could be a huge play if you have income outside of Italy, right? Now, the income inside of Italy is that 43%. That's pretty notable and high. But the great thing about this solution is you can figure out a way to get to create your income outside of Italy and cap that tax rate, which could become incredibly low compared to what you're doing right now.
Yeah, I mean, basically, I kind of did some rough math, but you're looking at about, depending on the state you live in, whether you have state income tax or not, and New Hampshire and Oregon happen to be two states that don't, so that's kind of unique. But But if you live in some of these other states, like Massachusetts or any of the other ones that we, that's where you kind of get hit. But somewhere between $275,000 and $300,000 of income, you're breaking even with a move to Italy.
What was that again?
$275,000 to $300,000 of income, you're breaking even with moving to Italy, almost somewhere.
Yeah.
So if you want,
I love it. It's a dream come true
for some. Right now, not necessarily.
Gosh, I'm already like the last scene of Gladiator, floating through the fields of Italy with my hands across the wheat.
Well, let's jump past Gladiator.
I'm not dead.
Let's jump past Gladiator here. But the UK is interesting because they actually had a lot of people moving from the United Kingdom to Italy, because with that scenario, Italy's tax is, it's basically almost half as well on income. So people have been moving to Italy because that has really become a tax haven. The article
Plus, I'd rather live in Italy than England anyways.
I don't know. I'm not sure that I would agree with that.
You don't think so?
No, I don't know. I've been to England and I loved it. So,
but you love pizza too.
Yeah. Sometimes. The article's kind of interesting, though, Seth. I really did find it interesting that it jumped into 12 other countries that have a 0% tax rate, including Monaco. They talked about St. Kitts, Nevis. They went through all these different things. What's interesting about St. Kitts was that all you have to do is have a minimum investment with them of $115,000.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. And then at that point in time, you become a citizen or citizenship of some sort, and then you get access to 156 other countries. I mean, I'm not necessarily opposed to that, but it's a little close to some concerning countries off the shore of South America, but it seems to be safe enough. So it's definitely an option.
You're not forced into going to these 156 countries. It's not like they send you on some tour once you give them their deposit. That's great.
Yeah, no, and then they go on and they talk about, the United Emirates, Qatar, Oman, some places maybe, Kuwait. I'm not sure I want to really live there, but it's a 0% tax rate with no initial investment. And I have a whole list. It's kind of an interesting article. So if you're looking for something like this, it's kind of outside the scope of a number of people. But Arthur Sarkisian on September 14th, 2020, had issued this article. So enjoy.
Well, folks, you probably haven't heard this headline. Americans' net worth grew in Q2 2020. Yes. In spite of coronavirus, in spite of a separation there of, I'm trying to remember what the numbers were at that time as far as unemployment. There was a lot of news that that doesn't, in our minds, necessarily say that Q2 number should have grown in our net worth, but that's the truth. That's exactly what happened. Samuel Steinberg brought us this information. Thank you so much. It's a tale of two Americans, domestic households. The net worth rose nearly 7% in the second quarter of 2020 to $119 trillion, according to the Federal Reserve.
That's a trillion, $119 trillion.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it is. It is incredible.
That's the increase.
Yes.
It's just in the middle of a pandemic, the world is falling apart. People are screaming and dying, and everyone doesn't know what to do. And everyone's net worth is growing 7% in one quarter.
Yes. In the same period, the amount of money in checking accounts grew by 33% to $1.8 trillion. And savings accounts grew by 6.1% to $11.2 trillion.
If you add those two numbers together, that's half of our deficit. That's how big that is. That's an enormous scenario. It just tells you how much people have cut spending and what you can do running a household. This is a financial planner's dream. So when we hear this stuff, this is like music to our ears. Oh, you're saving a ton of money and you're doing this is great. You don't need any more income. I mean, these are the
See, we told you could do it.
Yeah, we knew you could cut the expenses. That's just really very interesting and very, very exciting for a lot of people and so forth. But it also is hats off to a lot of scenarios too, because it went through the fact that there has been a huge amount of cutting in the spending. I mean, they went through and they said that various nationalities had cut spending by 50 to 70% across the country in fear of job losses or because of job losses. And stimulus packages had really helped a lot of those, and that was very interesting information about. I mean, to be able to cut your expenses by 70%. I mean, that's amazing. I know we did some cutting.
Congratulations, you guys! Like, congratulations, America! You tightened that belt.
Yeah,
they said it couldn't be done. Like, everybody out there said, no way are Americans ever going to be able to tighten the belt. It's like cat's out of the bag because we are a nation of consumerism. And you proved me. You proved them. You proved it wrong. I didn't think that was possible.
Yeah, completely. The stock portfolios during that same time period between April and June and quarter grew to $5.7 trillion, according to the report. Home values grew by $500 billion. Mm-hmm. I mean, these are just astronomical numbers, and it's pretty impressive about what's gone on here and what people have done. And I think, we've done a lot of advice inside of how to save, and we've done a lot of shows on that. It tells you what people can really do. And honestly, if you're not in this group, know that it can be done, and that is something that, with some work and effort, people can do with a lot less than what we feel like we need or told we need in the marketing world in this country.
That's going to do it for us at Money in the News. You are listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. When we come back, we're going to be talking about retiring early. Yeah, it's the show you have been waiting for and asking us for, and it's what we've been doing in our office all day long with our clients, helping them get to this place where retirement is a reality, and early retirement more than ever right now is what's on the table. It's what's on Money on Tap today. We'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Ben Brayshaw, one of the co-hosts of Money on Tap. If you have questions when it comes to your retirement and are looking for a personalized solution, contact us at Brayshaw Financial Group. In today's volatile stock market, we can help you plan to find your successful retirement solution. Am I saving enough? Am I saving into the right places? Do my investments match my appetite for risk? Do I have a tax strategy that is going to help me keep more of what I earn? How can I maximize my Social Security income? If you are like most people, you are getting closer and closer to your retirement and may be wondering if you're taking the right steps. If you're in retirement, you may be wondering, am I maximizing my income while preserving my estate and caring for my family? We talk about all things financial in what we call three-dimensional investing, putting a plan around your financial future. If you feel that now is the time to start getting the answers to some of these questions for your own situation, give us a call at Brayshaw Financial Group at 855-226-8551. Headquartered in Bedford, New Hampshire, we have offices throughout New England and across the country. We would love the opportunity to show you how we can help. There's absolutely no cost or obligation just to meet with us, and we welcome you to our office. Call us at 855-226-8551.
Now back to Money on Tap with Ben and Seth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. Today, we are excited to be able to bring to you a show that not only is it fun for us because it's kind of an outside of the box approach or idea that retirement could be something pushed up in the timeline. Normally when people bring us, finances and start asking us to start solve for retirement, at some point in time, we have to establish what that age could be, potentially. And a lot of the time, people kind of want to correlate that with, say, when Social Security kicks in, or at least is, that's pretty close in that corridor. So usually we're talking, 60 to 70. 60 is usually kind of the front end. 59 and a half would be about the earliest that people start putting that in the timeline. So we call it 60, right? That 59 and a half is typically because of, qualified distributions and the rules around that. But it's a retirement corridor. And we start solving for income at this time. Now, today we're talking with you about moving that timeline forward. Okay, and that could be as early as 50. I think that's about the earliest that we typically start having this conversation, or seeing people starting to have this conversation with us of what if or could I? And that's what we're going to be talking about today, folks. If that's you, or if that's close in your horizon, you want to pay attention mostly to what Ben's going to say, because, truly he brings the meat of the show. But there's going to be nuances here that you just haven't even considered. And considering the factors in here and accounting for the factors in here is one of the important pieces to being successful at this, right? It's you don't want to jump in on a vacation to, I don't know, for you, Ben, it's Bermuda, right? That's the spot. For us over here on the West Coast, we're going to Hawaii, or someplace warm. You don't want to jump into that and realize you didn't bring your suitcase. You didn't plan at all.
Well, Seth, I think early retirement has definitely gotten more of a tap on the shoulder recently than most of the time in the past. We meet people constantly who say, yeah, I want to retire at 50 or 55, or I don't get a lot of people in the 40s, but once in a while I do. And, they ask us to create and craft and so forth. And some of those are big buyouts from companies or tech companies and whatnot. But more recently with, this pandemic scenario and everything that's going on, there's been a lot of offers by corporations for, some sort of, early retirement incentive. And that's going to people who are under, the 59 and a half age, as Seth had mentioned. We traditionally, people are looking at 60 years old as an earliest retirement because they want to avoid the 10% tax penalty for taking money out of their retirement plans before they're 59 and a half, which is the tax law. So when you have an IRA, you have to pay income tax on those distributions. But when you're under 59 and a half, you have to pay a 10% penalty. Now, there's a couple ways that we've talked about in the past on this show where we've done shows on 72T and 72Q, which have to do with early distributions prior to 59 and a half, and that's for qualified and non-qualified assets. Well, 72T, which is for qualified assets, which is that you can take money out of your retirement plan prior to 59 and a half and not pay a tax penalty, has been pretty much the mainstay for a lot of people, and that's because you have to take income, and you take income over equal and subsequent payments. And what that means is there's a calculation that the IRS does, or you have done, that the IRS has given us, and your CPA is usually the person who does it, and they calculate an equal payment that you'll receive from the age you are to basically to the infinity of spending the money. And you have to keep that payment equal until you turn 59 and a half. So you have to choose to take this payment. And that has been what everyone has done planning around. And 72Q has very similar rules and so forth, but it's for non-qualified assets, or assets that you invested with money after you were taxed on it. So you got paid the money, you put it in your savings account, and you decide to invest into an annuity. You can do the 72Q with that. And you have to do the exact same thing to avoid the 10% penalty that the IRS has on those funds. Now, that has just been what we've done. But recently, with the CARES Act, we've had a bunch of changes, and I think Seth's going to chat a little bit about that.
Right. So, first of all, what was the CARES Act? Okay. And how do you qualify? So CARES Act was passed in order to allow hardships right now that we could be experiencing to grant access to qualified money, that 401k money, that IRA money, right? Which typically, as Ben mentioned before, if you're to take that out prior to 59 and a half, if you're not using the 72 T or Q method, it would get you a 10% penalty right out of the gate. Okay, so what they're saying is we're going to do away with that, and we're going to allow you access to your 401k up to $100,000 for you to go ahead and grab that if you have, in the event that you have something that qualifies you to do this. Okay, right now you've got a stable job, let's say. That does not qualify you, right? But if you did happen to test positive or have some kind of a health incident that would get you into this qualification to be able to take up to $100,000 out of your 401k, right? Now, there's, of course, some guidance and some other pieces that you have to be paying attention to with this. Is it $100,000 that you just can go do whatever you want? You're like, oh, great. Hey, got $100,000 here. Is it tax-free? All these other considerations here. So the answers to this are no, it is not tax-free. However, you can break that $100,000 up, or whatever it is that you take under that $100,000 up. You can break that taxability into 3 years. Okay, so it's still, depending on where you're at in your circumstances, it could still put you into a taxable scenario that doesn't, for you, look favorable. Okay, so that is one of the first considerations that you want to understand there. Okay, we're not going to get into necessarily all of the qualifiers here. There's a list of what you could qualify, or what could get you into the qualification corridor here. The point that is really of most note and interest is that you're not going to get a 10% penalty for an early withdrawal there.
Yeah, okay? Seth, I read these qualification exemptions, and I'll tell you, I mean, it's pretty broad, though. I mean, it's not like you had to lose your job. It's like you rescinded, a job offer was rescinded, you were quarantined, furloughed, you lost money or your self-employment income. I mean, it would be hard for you to not qualify. I mean, I think everyone has had a business interruption here from COVID. I mean, I can't imagine. You can't say you haven't. I mean, you'd be really hard pressed to say that COVID did not impact your business in somehow, some way. Be like, we lost productivity because we couldn't get employees into the office and we had to do everyone remote. And yeah, our income dropped 3%. I mean, there's still an impact there. And so there's a lot of opportunity to create that. I read those rules, and I read those as having huge breadth of opportunity for people. But I was thinking about this and saying, husband and wife married, wife maybe doesn't have a retirement plan. Husband does. They've had financial impact. They can take out $100,000 from his retirement plan. I mean, they clearly had, if she loses her job, I mean, there's clearly an opportunity to take that money out, but it's actually $100,000 per person, which is interesting as well.
So you could have $200,000 in hand this year because it's your money. It's from your 401k. It's just kind of in that, or your IRA. It's in that waiting mode for you to access. So you could have up to $200,000 for per household, basically. Does that make sense for you, right? And that's the thing that you have to consider in the rest of the numbers. What is it that you need? Are you just trying to access cash because you can, and you want a vacation, or you want a new car, you potentially can do that, right?
There's no requirement of how to spend the money. It's just that you've been impacted by COVID. You want to pull $100,000 out and go buy a, I don't know, a Lexus or BMW or something. I mean, have fun. Which a lot of people are doing, by the way.
So for the point of what we're trying to articulate here is we're talking about an early retirement, right? And that might look like retirement for you, right? That might be your first goal is buying that car, getting to the place that you've always been dreaming of. In that, and in that case, great. We now have freed up capital that would have had some penalties prior. And so we know that we've got a kind of like this new pool of money that's available for us to try to ultimately create income. Okay. Question for you, Ben. If let's say that you're not in an early retirement scenario and you lost your job for a week or whatever the situation is, would you say that this is a place where somebody could go and just maybe pay off their mortgage if they were wanting to do something like that? Is that something that makes sense?
Wow, that's a deep question, Seth, and has a lot of. I mean, you're just trying to put me out there, dangle off the edge of a tree here over a cliff. Well, the thing is with all of the different moving parts here, we could never say, yeah, go do this. What's interesting about this $100,000 is that it automatically is taxed over the next 3 years, which is very, very interesting, right? So you can spread out this tax bite. The problem is that in 2020, if you're just getting a furlough notice today, like if you're an airline pilot and they're saying, hey, listen, we still don't have flights for you, we're going to have to furlough you because we're not getting any money from the government. Well, that's a real problem. And they may say, I need to take money out. Well, you may want to push that to 2021 because if you're not working in 2021, then maybe, that's a great time to keep your taxes down. Because if you're married filing jointly and you're under that kind of $80,000 rough threshold, you're only going to be in the 12% income tax bracket. Once you go over $80,000, every dollar above that's going to be at the 22% tax bracket. That's almost a doubling. It's a huge jump. And so it's something to be very cognizant of in this area. And that kind of breaking it out over 3 years, if you can keep yourself under that, that $80,000 threshold, married filing jointly, spreading that tax bite out and taking the money out might actually be a great move. It's also potentially a good move if you think you're going to be in a higher tax bracket when you retire than 12%, and you can muster some money out. Because a lot of people have money in savings. They say, oh, I'll spend that. But, if that's going to provide for your short-term income and you've got some space between what you've actually earned and $80,000 on that joint side, it's good to actually pull a little bit of money out, maybe pay that 12%. That might be something to talk to your CPA about. Something I would potentially consider because 12% is an extremely low tax bracket, and you might have some oddball scenarios here. So pay your house off, Seth. Not a lot of people just owe $100,000 on their house. So that might be not quite enough to get you there. Was that a good non-answer for you?
Oh, it was perfect. Yeah. There's just all sorts of I mean, that looks like a smart money move for a lot of people, is like, and that's a goal, right? Let's get that mortgage paid off. That might be one of those first things that people all the time, anytime somebody's coming in and saying, hey, I want to retire, let's retire early. That is one of the conversations that we have, like right out of the gate. Is that what you're going to do with that money? Okay. So anyways, the question is, it depends, right? Or the answer is, it depends. You take a look at that and you try to figure out what is the risk, how do we manage that, and what's the opportunity. So with that, we're going to come back. You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551. We wanted to just cover the CARES Act and access to monies that you didn't have available prior to this year. Now they are. So they're part of the consideration in this question of, hey, how can I retire early? Do I retire early? There's going to be a lot more coming your way. We'll be right back. You're listening to Money on Tap.
Hi, my name is Seth Crustman, partner with Brayshaw Financial Group and one of the co-hosts of Money on Tap. One of the biggest concerns and largest expenses people face today is taxes. Without thoughtful planning, taxes can destroy future retirement dollars, eliminating the possibility of a timely retirement or dreams of what you want retirement to look like. If you're like most people, you're getting closer and closer to retirement, and you may be wondering if you're taking the right steps. Will my income be enough? Will rising taxes force me to give up my dreams? How does inflation factor into all of this? These are real concerns, and you're not alone. Putting a plan around your financial future is what we do. If you have questions when it comes to your financial security, And if you're looking for a personalized solution, contact us at Brayshaw Financial Group, 855-226-8551. It's time for you to start getting answers to your questions. Headquartered in Bedford, New Hampshire, Brayshaw Financial has offices across the country. We'd love the opportunity to show you how we can help. There's absolutely no cost or obligation to meet with us. Call us at 855-226-8551. 855-226-8551.
Now back to Money on Tap with Ben and Seth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551. We are talking about early retirement today, and we kind of dove off into the CARES Act in the last segment, because it really is. It's a factor that out there that so many people are bringing to the table today and asking us, hey, is this something that I should do? I could do? Pretty much the opportunity there for anybody to take advantage of that is pretty wide. They're given a wide berth in that CARES Act to you to access up to $100,000 and waiving like the 20% holdback that would typically be there on a distribution from your 401k.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, people don't realize that when they take a distribution from a retirement plan and it's early and it's going to be penalized, there's a 10% IRS penalty. There's a 20% usually tax withholding, okay, right, that happens automatically as well. And you got to pay income tax on that thing. So, right, I mean, you're not seeing more than half of that money. I mean, that at the very best. So you would take $100,000 out normally, you're going to see $50,000 at the very highest usually. So that's complicated. That's a very complicated scenario. And one of the things I think, Seth, that I wanted to kind of tie together here between the CARES Act and the concept of the 72T that we talked about earlier, and kind of a couple of moving parts here with taxes, okay? Now, the longer you wait to start your 72T, the higher your income is going to be. I think that's something you need to understand first. So if you start your 72T now, you're really going to kind of shoot yourself in the foot a little bit when you can potentially take $100,000 out and delay it another year or two. Now, we're not talking significant dollar difference, but when you're talking year over year over year and you have this one-time opportunity and you can spread the tax bite over 3 years, it could delay you a year or two in starting your 72T, which might get you to a little bit better retirement number and allow your the rest of the money to grow a little bit. I mean, you're obviously taking $100,000 out of it, so that's going to pull it back. The other thing is that, if you're married filing jointly and you and your wife, your spouse or whatever, lost your jobs and you've got $60,000 of income, and we talked about the $80,000 being the 12% max bracket area, you could take $60,000 out of your retirement plan and spread that $20,000 out over the next 3 years, which would, take your current year 60 to 80. Okay. Right. You'd have 20,000 of 1/3 of that. So, doing this smart could be an option for you just to reduce the amount of money. Maybe you can live on $60,000 and that works for you guys. And, but getting money out of your retirement plan without penalty at a lower tax bracket and not knowing what next year looks like could be a good deal. But you're also taking the chance of what does next year look like or the year after. Now, if you do both land new jobs and things are good, you can pay this money back, which is pretty cool. Like, I mean, you could say, hey, I think this is a good move and I can pay some of this back. So that's a real opportunity to consider, that you're not just making, because a 3-year decision that's going to affect your taxes is a pretty serious choice. So you have to know that. And I think there's a couple of moving parts there that, and I know we're getting in the weeds a little bit here, Seth. So I would encourage anyone who has questions about this to give us a call. This is what we do. We can help you through this. And go ahead.
Yeah. I was going to say that walking through the mind of a financial planner as you bring scenarios up, it's like the order of operations. And I'm just listening to you go, and I'm like, yeah, checking boxes here. This is what we're talking about. And I feel for you right now if you're listening to us and you're like, oh my gosh, what are these guys doing? Because it is, first of all, it's a safe place. You're okay. We're just trying to mitigate some risk here and factor in everything else. And don't worry if you don't figure this out right out of the gate. That's what we're here for. We're here to help, but these are some of the considerations and some of the factors that you really do need to pay attention to.
And you're so right, Seth. I mean, because if you hear this stuff 3 or 4 times, it's going to take that long for you to understand what we're talking about. So getting one round in right now is probably a good thing. And when you call us, we give you round 2. But, for some people, I think the biggest issue here, Seth, is there's a couple of unknowns, right? Because you might be employed, need some assistance in this, but your employer might not be allowing coronavirus-related distribution options. Like the CARES Act could be existing, but you could be still employed, and their retirement plan is not permitting that. That's a real issue. So one thing we've talked to people about is that you can literally jump into the other, quote-unquote, other hardship categories and see, like, if you can't pay your mortgage or if it's impacting those things, you can make a claim against that. Some of those types of things that are in those hardships can probably be mustered together if you really do have a hardship going on. So, and that's something I would just throw out there.
Anything else with the CARES Act, or are we going to get into the other factors here? Because this is...
No, just keep going. I think there's a lot here. We're not going to get through all of it. I mean, that's
we're going to run out of time, like as normal, right? We're going to bring another show to you, and back into some more facts and some more figures here. Anyways, the fun stuff, right? What is this going to do? How could this work for you? And first of all, we're going to run the numbers, right? First step in deciding whether to take early retirement is to see, right? Do you have enough assets under the hood? Can you support your lifestyle? And figure that lifestyle out. That's what I'm saying. The fun stuff, like figure out what do you want? And then, life expectancies, that's something we got to calculate for in there, right? And we talked about entering into this show, kind of this corridor of retirement, entering into retirement. We're moving that forward. So we have possibly another gap of time here that we're having to account for supporting you. So we got to figure out, what do you got under the hood? How much of this can we use at first? How much of this can we access early on? That's the CARES Act, possibly. For us getting some of that, that's 72 possibly, for getting some of that to the table for you to support you early on. But the rest of this mix is really going to be based early on with, non-qualified assets, okay? Or how have you structured your life in a way to allow this to happen? So what do we have under the hood? Now, another factor that you might have here is your current employer, or possibly soon to be ex-employer, might be offering you a buyout, right? Hey, you're employed here today, but here's something that we want you to consider. A lump sum of cash, okay, with maybe some other incentives here. We might carry your health insurance that you have here with us for the next year, 2 years, whatever those factors are. So there's a package that they're willing to offer you to move on. Okay. And that's first of all, that's amazing if you have that, because ultimately that could look like not free money, because it's usually a tax bite that's going to happen again. Income does create taxes, but there might be some ways to parse that out, or, you might be able to spread that out. That might be part of the offer that's on the table. But we're going to consider those packages as they come in. And whether or not you love your job, you probably need to think about this, because that may not be there the next time. At-will employment is at will. There's no reason for them to have to. They're not forced into a situation to give you some kind of a package for letting you go, if that's the
yes. I mean, this is a wonderful thing to be offered by an employer, and it's something to be considered seriously. And for a lot of people, they're like, well, okay, if I get this package, and they start doing the math, how long can I pay my mortgage? And then I've got savings, and okay, I got like 8 months of money to survive. And then what do I do if I can't find a job? And then the other question is do I just stay where I'm at and milk this thing as long as I possibly can? And the real fear here is that there may not be a second offer, and you could be laid off in shorter time period than the incentive might carry you out. I mean, one client of mine had like I think it was 2 weeks for every year he had worked, and it was, I mean, it was like up to a year of money. I mean, he had a year of incentive. And he's like, I could stay here, but I could be laid off in 3 months. You know, that's a big deal. And he's like, he's actually, it's funny. In reading up on this, and we've read a bunch of articles and read information and putting all this together, I was reading one spot where, people had taken these incentive plans, and then within a few weeks they had another job. So it's just a massive bonus for them coming and going. The other thing is that people are taking jobs and starting up careers that they've only dreamed of. Or, I have some people that are brilliant technology clients, just absolutely brilliant. And so smart they don't even realize they're smart. Like, they just know they're just different. Like, they're like, listen, I just do this stuff, and this is just what I do, and they just think they're just different than everybody. But they're just straight up brilliant. And one guy is just like, you know what? I have just been grinding this. It's just taxing me mentally, because he comes home from work and he's just burnt out, and he's like, I want to go get a job at Starbucks. Like, I've always wanted to work at a Starbucks. And he has all the money to do that. I'm like, you can retire early. Go have fun.
Hey, next to Disneyland, it is the happiest place on the planet. I mean, look at how much fun that is. You're just helping people, getting them coffee.
Yeah. So, that type of opportunity, but there's a lot of people doing consulting and starting their own businesses, and they don't need to make the same money they were making, and realize, this pandemic thing has helped a lot of people come down to earth and say, I don't need all the stuff that we have.
I've seen a lot of people, well, with the Intel crowd over here in Hillsborough, this is something that they roll out regularly. And, we've had our clients, take a pass on the first, time that they ever were in the corridor of being offered this. They were pretty young in their career still, maybe in their 50s someplace. But the next round that came around was, 3-4 years down the road. Now, this is something that made a lot of sense. They didn't know 4 more years at Intel may not pan out the way that they're hoping, or they're just done. And what I've seen a lot of those people do is they get the offer, they take a 6-month break, and they're retired. We figured that out for them, but they get a call, or usually several calls, saying, "Hey, we got this team over here, and they really could use some help, and we're not going to bring you back on into the Intel hub or the company hub. You're going to be a consultant." But those consultants make sometimes far more than what they were previously employed at, and that's actually what has happened. I would say 50% of the time, if not more. That's a safe number, 50%, right?
Sure, why not? Just go with it. Most statistics are made up right there.
It's a lot of the time. I don't know what the number is.
No, you're right. And the thing is they don't have to, as consultants, they don't have to worry about incentives to get people out of there. They don't have to worry about unemployment and taxes. And there's a lot of reasons why they do that. Yeah. I would say that this is interesting because we have a number of people right now we're working with who are looking at early retirement. And, and I mentioned one person who just wants to take a step back. And then there's other people who say, I want to take a step back, but it's an intentional step back. I had one guy tell me, I'm going to have a new job. He's like, I'm getting this incentive package. I'm taking it, but there's like 15,000 jobs out there for my specific skill set. I can have a job at literally a phone call. So I'm not worried about that. So people are taking intentional breaks. There's some people, I'm just thinking of one woman that is literally just driven and capable and super brilliant, and she's going to take a break, and she knows she's going to have another job. She doesn't know when, she doesn't know what. She's just like, well, there'll be another one right around the corner. It's great. And those types of things are awesome. And there's a lot to this and this type of event. And it's more so, I think the point of this show is there's more of that going on now because of all that's going and happening. And we know that this information is valuable.
If you're listening to Money on Tap, you can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. And we're going to be heading down and landing the plane on your retirement, your early retirement show. So one of the things that we really haven't talked, we've talked about all sorts of stuff. We talked about CARES Act. We talked about 72T. Ultimately, we've kind of been compiling this information that's out there and accessible for us to consider. How are we going to retire early? All right. All of that, all of those things built around income, right? That is the solve that we have to drive towards, taking into account all of the factors, lifestyle, right? Expenses. You've just got the hard costs. You've got the soft costs, and you've got all these other questions in between. But at the end of the day, we're going to replace that paycheck, right? And we're going to create something that is not going to go away before the end of your life. Okay, you actually might have another opportunity in the job environment. You might not, even though you have those opportunities, you may not even be interested in addressing that or even considering that. Whatever it is for you, we got to solve for income. So, regardless, we're going to help figure that out, and we want to do that with as much information as possible. So, do you have any pensions? Okay. These are places that we're going to look for more solves for us. Are the severance payments? They're great. That's a welcome start. Okay, but that may not get us there. We might have a gap. Okay, the pre-retirement plans, such as your 401k and your IRA. All right, these might be places that we can either take a look at that CARES Act and that distribution, or the 72 equation. Now, the 72T, right, or 72. Q, something to consider. What is that, Ben?
Well, we talked about taking that equal and subsequent payment, that you can set up in your retirement plan. We talked about delaying that if you're going to take a distribution from, the CARES Act opportunity here and so forth. But the one thing that really is kind of like the buyer beware concept, like the thing you should really be careful of here, is that once you start that 72T, as I mentioned earlier, you can't stop it. So if you did find a new job and you started this 72T, you would be stuck taking that income throughout all the remaining years until 59 and a half on top of your current income, which could pop you into a totally different tax bracket, could be excessively taxed, all sorts of different concerns and fears there. So this is not something to go into lightheartedly, and you need to have a really good handle on budgeting your finances when you do something like this. And, we've managed through this with clients. We've looked at pros and cons. We've looked at, making alternate contributions and did various things to create deductions in their taxes and whatnot to offset those types of things if all of a sudden a great job comes along. But if a great job comes along, you're going to be negotiating this fact of, hey, listen, I'm already retired and I've set up things and, this is going to cost me to come out of retirement. So there's that conversation potentially if you're really somebody's looking for, that can become a negotiation factor. But 72T is not something, or 72Q is something you can't stop. And going into this is something you really need a planner behind you with, because it's a very specific number. It needs to be controlled, and there needs to be a lot of offset around you to deal with unforeseen issues. Because you can't say, hey, I took my 72T, and actually, you know what? All my money's in my retirement plan, and I need another $25,000 because my boiler just went. Or, hey, I got to fix the roof on my house. Or, you can't do it. It doesn't work that way. And so this is a real serious issue and very, very complicated.
Ideally, you don't have everything that you own locked up in a couple of places, okay? And those two places that we want to kind of safeguard against are, A, your home. And a lot of people consider the home an asset, and they look at that and they look at the value of that home and what the level of the mortgage is at, and they want to pay off that mortgage and own the home free and clear. And we understand that's a cash flow scenario, and it's also a security scenario where people feel that no matter what, they're going to be able to have this as an asset. Okay, but the consideration here is that is an asset that is locked up. Okay, so you don't have access. There's no fluidity to that asset in solving for income. And there's a couple of ideas around there that we definitely bring to the table. We want to consider, do you have a home equity line of credit? Okay, Not an ideal solution, but it is something that at least offers a back of some access to that asset if you need it. And it's a precaution. So do you have that? The other place that we talk about not wanting to have all your assets locked up is into those retirement plans, the IRAs, the 401ks, and the reasons because we've already described why that would be. So outside of those two places, what are other options that you could have, okay, in creating income? Well, I'm going to go back to that real estate solution again for people. If you have rentals or some of those other properties that you've started to accumulate prior to this decision, okay, this is not usually a jump in, start creating an income stream off of real estate. Ideally, at this point in time, you should have kind of planned through that. It should be a part of who you are. You understand that resource and how to use that resource and how that flows through in your taxes. The other place is in your non-qualified assets. Okay, and non-qualified assets are those outside of the 401k, outside of the IRA. Do you have cash value life insurance? Is that some place where you've got some liquidity and some tax-free lendability from yourself? There's the be your own bank concept that we can use that life insurance for to subsidize, or possibly you've got some options in there to go ahead and just turn on a stream of income from those. Depending on what kind of cash value life insurance you have, that might be a solution or an option.
Yeah, I was going to say, Seth, too, one thing about real estate is that I know people who have been paying it down, investment real estate, and not collecting any income and using that extra income, even though it's a little bit, to slap on the mortgage. And now they've stopped doing that, and they're taking in a few $100 a month or whatever, and it's not really a huge cash flowing property because they've maybe taken a 20-year or whatever amortization. But I've seen people refinance those properties to lower their payments at these lower rates, which is interesting, just to create more cash flow inside the property. So they're still paying it down, and they've just refinanced what their current debt is. And yeah, it drags it out, but they're at a lower rate, and they create more income for themselves. And that's just a clever way of offsetting that issue.
Absolutely. Another non-qualified asset that we want to take a look at is, do you have any brokerage accounts, or do you own any stocks? Do you own anything in the market securities that can have some tax preferential treatment in the liquidation process, right? Can we take a look at long-term capital gains, or can we take a look at some losses and harvest those losses? Is there some ways, or do we have any levers out there available for us to work through, especially as we get from 2020 into that 2021 corridor? Because that transition of income, ordinary income, into sustaining yourself through retirement accounts, real estate, any cash flow vehicles that we have access to.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long laundry list of opportunities and things. What I've always found is that, and I can't say always, but I would say the majority of the time when we build plans and we work with people, they say, I never saw it that way, or I didn't know you could do that, or that makes more sense. I mean, those are common phrases that we hear with people when they realize how to manipulate the money to really work for them differently. And that's just even in distributions, like the 72T concept, or, maybe refinancing the piece of real estate, or we've talked to people about we've had shows on this about annuitizing an annuity to a non-qualified side to create a portion of principal to come out, so it's not all entirely taxable. People just don't realize, because it's not about how much you take out, it's about how much of that money you get to keep. And when you really get your hands on that and the difference in that's where planning changes, and that's where the competition's totally different, and that's where you have to understand how to manipulate money in a way that works for you.
Thanks for joining us today. You've been listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. Also, we're in a podcast. You can find us at any of the podcast venues out there. We appreciate the likes and the listens. We're also at Facebook at /3D Investing and Twitter at BFG_LLC. We appreciate you joining us here today, and we hope you make it a great day and a great life. Thanks for joining us with Money on Tap.
The views expressed are not necessarily the opinion of this radio station and should not be construed directly or indirectly as an offer to buy or sell any securities mentioned herein. Investing is subject to risks, including loss of principal invested. No strategy, product, material, or tool mentioned can assure a profit nor protect against loss. Please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information, products, materials, or tools mentioned should be relied upon when coordinated with individual professional advice. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. This show may be subsidized in whole or in part by a product sponsor or issuer. Securities and advisory services offered through SagePoint Financial Incorporated, member FINRA SIPC, and a registered investment advisor. All other services offered through Brayshaw Financial Group LLC are independent of SagePoint Financial. SagePoint Financial and Brayshaw Financial Group do not provide tax or legal advice. Main office is located at 116 South River Road, Bedford, New Hampshire, 03110, and can be reached at toll-free 855-226-8551.
Well, bye.